Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church. We welcome you to our broadcast this morning on this Sunday morning. Happens to be the 3rd of April, 2022. We're still in the pandemic, but coming out of it now. The infection rates are dropping and the death rates are dropping every day. We've gone from several thousand dead a day in the United States to much lower numbers now, and the same with infections, the infection rates, which is great. That's a good thing. There's still some people who need to get their vaccinations for whatever reason. They put it off or just haven't. But if they're medically able, that would be a great thing for all of us. As part of a message of Christianity, the United States, people who are Christian, who profess to care about others and themselves, ought to at least consider taking care of themselves and others by getting a vaccination, and they're taking care of their health. And because that is one way to help care for others. Okay, well, that on the side. Let's see, it's still cold here in Western New York. I'm retired Pastor Karl Schmidt with Calvary Lutheran Church. It's a little Lutheran church that is in Amherst, New York, right outside of Buffalo. And the text today, we're up to the 5th Sunday of Lent in 2022, is from the Gospel of John, chapter 8. It's a longer section, but I'm only going to read 2 verses of it today for this morning's broadcast. It's from the Gospel of John, the 8th chapter. I'm reading verses 50 and 51. And I seek not mine own glory. There is one that seeketh and judgeth. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Here ends that portion of the Gospel text from the Gospel of John, the 8th chapter, verses 50 and 51. Well, this is a really beautiful portion of gospel text. I say it's gospel text because, see, in God's Word, there are 2 kinds of messages besides narrative and the account of different people going back and forth, to and fro. But essentially, when it comes to the message in Scripture, there's 2 parts. The first is the law, and these 2 parts are both spoken by the same mouth, not a human mouth, but from the mouth of God. And sometimes he speaks to us directly from the heavens, and sometimes he speaks through prophets or apostles or disciples. And then often, in these days, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years later, he's had these same prophets and apostles write things down for us. And throughout the ages, these things have been transmitted as best as they could to the present day. And so, these are the things that convey to us God's message in 2 parts. The first part being law, the second part being gospel. Today's text is principally gospel, although it does mention the law. So let's look at that first. How does this text mention the law? Verse 51 is the verse we're actually focusing on, principally of Gospel of John, chapter 8. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Now, thanatos is the Greek root for death. It means essentially destruction. Something that comes to an end. In the Old Testament Hebrew, it's mut, which essentially means the same thing, ultimate destruction, not participating in any continuance. And so whether it's mut in the Hebrew or thanatos in the Greek, the meaning is essentially one and the same: death, destruction, annihilation, a complete end. Well, that, of course, is not gospel, not because gospel just means good news, but that is, in fact, law. And so this text does include a note of the law that there is death. And as I mentioned previously in the beginning, before we read the text about the pandemic, we've had somewhere near 1 million people in the United States die and tens of millions who got sick. Some of them have long-haul COVID and are still sick, even months and years later, unable to taste, affected mental facilities. In other words, they're having trouble thinking clearly or keeping thoughts straight. There's all sorts of complications, heart, skin, liver, kidneys, that can go on for months or years. And frankly, because it's so new, we don't know how much long-term can be. But that has illustrated one simple point, and as we've all in the United States had to hunker down and put on masks and keep distance, and early on, 2 years ago, we were all just basically hiding in our houses, not knowing what was going on, because even the scientists didn't yet understand this disease. I myself have just now got my second booster of the Pfizer to help prevent this little thing we call death. That shouldn't be surprising to anyone, because when you've been surrounded with, in 2 years, nearly 1 million deaths and 40-some plus million sick, just in our own country. Worldwide, it's obviously much higher. But then the issue of death is on the table. Even children have had to deal with this, and babies, young people, everyone has had to deal with this idea of death. Because the plague, the pandemic, is an equal opportunity strike. It can hit anybody, and it does and has. And it's tragic when it does, but that's the nature of death, isn't it? Death hits all of us. There's no one that escapes. Often said that once every about 110 years, the entire population of the world dies. People are worried about the end of the world. It happens every 110 years or so. The entire population of the world cycles through at least one time. And that should be obvious. I don't even think I shouldn't actually have to say it, but I guess for people who haven't thought about it, maybe it hasn't been so obvious. Death is absolutely universal. Even plants die. Animals die. Humans die. Now that is a result of an imperfect world, a broken relationship with whoever this God is who brings us death. You see, in the law, we don't see God. In the law, God hides himself behind death. He doesn't present himself. In fact, he doesn't even speak, other than once where he spoke death against us for the broken relationship that we were responsible for. How is that? Not quite sure, really. Since I can't sit down with him at a coffee table and understand how it is that we've become living offenses before him, worthy of death. In the Hebrew, again, mut, or in the Greek, thanatos, in English, death. How is it that we are, us little frail creatures of dust and disaster and fate and all the rest of it, how is it that we lay down and die and somehow we have offended him? I don't know. I don't know anybody that does know. Oh, sure. Some people say, well, it's sin. Okay. And if you ask them, what does sin mean? Then they come up with some silly little laundry list of things. They say, well, this is in the 10 Commandments. Okay, that's fine if you're like 10 years old. If you need a little laundry list to tell you the difference between right and wrong things. But that's not what sin is. Sin is not on that laundry list. A soldier kills, even though it says thou shalt not kill. But a soldier kills, and it's not wrong. It's right if he's defending his own country. There's a war going on in Ukraine where Russia has attacked Ukraine. Of course they have to defend their homes. I mean, you don't have to be smart to know that. You don't have to be politically savvy. You have your home, your house, and someone tries to blow it up and kill your family. Of course you defend it. That it does not take intelligence. The Nazis tried to do the same thing in World War II. And of course we had to defend ourselves against them. So the soldier defends his home. There's nothing wrong with that. So context and everything else matters. And yet, how is it that this all happens before this God? Or again, I don't even know what that means. So it's impossible for us to accurately describe what sin is, or to use some trite formula and say, well, our book says this is what sin is. Okay, all right. Concupiscence, inborn lust, a broken relationship with God. Unless you can sit me down with yourself at a coffee table with this God and have him explain it, okay, then I'll say you have a handle on it. But until then, sorry, I'm not buying it. But what I do buy is that death comes. And that's real. And although we don't understand how we have broken this relationship, we don't understand. You see, a perfection is like a mountaintop that we've never seen. We're in the valley. And the mountaintop is in the clouds, like in Switzerland. We can't see what's up there. We've never seen it. We don't know. We have no idea. And yet, that's what, when this God said to Abraham, walk with me and be thou perfect. Yeah, like Abraham was anything near perfect. What a joke. He, like the rest of us, were lousy. And there's plenty of accounts in the Old Testament how Abraham was a lousy man. The lousy things he did. One of the things he did wrong was he was a compulsive liar. He just had a hard time telling the truth. Or the way he treated his family. He was terrible at treating his family. He was an awful man. Walk with me and be thou perfect? Seriously? But that's the nature of the law, you see, of these two messages that come from this God, this being we call God. And it doesn't help us at all. The law offers no friendship. The law offers no consolation, comfort, hope, peace, reconciliation. The law is not our friend. The law from the mouth of God speaks death toward us. Okay, enough of that. But when we take a look at this text, this is where we see the gospel as well. In verse 51, verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Suddenly, we're no longer looking at death, even though we all still die. And yet, to not see death is to go from life to life. This is the beauty of good news. I mean, if your doctor could come to you and go, well, yeah, you have a terminal disease. There's nothing more we can do for you. We estimate that within 3 or 4 months, the disease will run its course and you will succumb to the disease. I'm sorry. There's just nothing else we can do. So we're giving you this to keep you comfortable and spend as much time enjoying what life you have left as best you can. And we'll assist you in any way possible. But we can't cure you. We can't further help you. The disease will take its course, and you will succumb and die. Well, if the doctor instead could say, well, you have a disease like that, and you'll succumb to it, but at the same time you won't succumb to it, you'll find yourself instantly alive again and forever beyond the pale of disease and death and injury and ruin and anything harsh or sad. That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? That would be really excellent. But you see, doctors can't offer that because that's not within their realm. Well, this is where religion has a voice. This is where the second message from God who speaks salvation, who speaks life, he sent his Son, Jesus, that in the face of his Son we see the Father. Jesus said to the disciples, "Whoever's seen me has seen my Father." Well, of course we have. We see Dad, we see his Son, we see ourselves. We see a family that is revealed in the face of our brother, Jesus. Now God has a face. Now God has a body. Now God has joined our ranks, has become one among us, and has added our fate to his own, so that the death that we have deserved and brought upon ourselves, in fact, no longer can assault, harm, or destroy us. Instead, now it's life, life upon life, life everlasting, life. Again, I don't even know what the word everlasting means either, frankly. However, what I do know is the difference between death and life. Where death is an end, a destruction, a wrath, a failure. Life, on the other hand, is friendship, love, family, reconciliation, adoption, forgiveness, to be heralded no longer as a stranger but as family, to be the children of the resurrection, children of God. These are the things that the mouth of God calls us in the good news or the gospel. And that's why Jesus says to keep my sayings. In the Greek, tereo. Tereo means to keep watch over, to guard something, to mark attentively, to heed something attentively. If you're playing some sort of video game and you have to follow the rules, but you find a way in the rules that you can excel in it. You look carefully and you watch attentively to play the game. Well, that's the kind of attention people put into video games. But here Jesus says if we apply that attention to his sayings, the logon, the words of hope and peace that he's spoken to us, the forgiveness that the Father through the Son offers to the world. How has he done that? Oh, that's his business. That's not ours. That's not even for the church to decide. Our task is to announce the forgiveness, to open with the keys of the kingdom the gates of heaven in the story that's not about us. Martin Luther once said that the gospel is really nothing else than the story of Jesus. And that, I think, is a good summary. It's about the promise in the Old Testament days that the Father made through the prophets about his Son, that his Son would be born into this world of a young woman, and that eventually she'd be revealed as Mary, and that in Greek her name is Maria, and so we find that Jesus in Greek is born of Mary, and Luke, the great physician, he records this tikto, or giving birth, just a simple natural birth, her first. And Jesus is born, the Son of God and the Son of Man, all in one person, this miracle. And he lives among us perfectly and yet shares our fate in death, because he's entered into a doomed race, a doomed humankind. But he did this on purpose, to lay our brokenness on his own shoulders, and then to instead give us the benefit of his observance of the law, living before it perfectly, to be the one human being to stand before his Father with acceptance, the one human being, then true God and true man, whom the Father welcomes, and in him we are all welcome then. By his journey to the cross, by his death, by his resurrection, we then find with the same Father, his Father, now our Father. And in his life is our life. In his resurrection, we find resurrection. So that Jesus say, in those who keep tereo, his sayings. In other words, knowing this good news that God the Father smiles. That's the simplest summary of it all. The Father smiles upon you. That's the gospel. And he will always smile. He has already smiled. When were you forgiven? Eons ago, when the Father decided to do this for you, for all the world. Who is it for? Humanity. Are there any exceptions? No, there are no exceptions. He did it for humanity. For God so loved the world, to cosmos. That's who for. All. Is it already done? Yes. Do we have anything to do with it? No. Can we improve it or prevent it? No. It's a finished thing. And we just simply hear this good news, and God brings it to us, delivers it to us, implants it in our hearts, and causes us to trust that he would smile upon us, accept us, adopt us, reconcile us, forgive us, love us, own us, call us his own, bring us to his home, share his home with us as a gift forever, and life with him forever. A lot of things there I can't possibly understand, but that's the beauty of good news. Sometimes it just melts your heart and it tastes really good. Scripture says, taste and see the Lord is good. Oh boy, is he good. Well, again, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt with our message from the Gospel of John, the 8th chapter, particularly verse 51. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. One little thing about the word to keep there, it's in the subjunctive, it's a verb. It happens to be third person singular, first aorist, subjunctive, and the active. So the subjunctive mood is an unusual mood. It means anticipation, with expectation. Does God force us to believe? No. But does he wish and desire us to? Does he hope that we will welcome this good news, and as good news that applies to us? With anticipation, with expectation. That's why Jesus puts the verb to keep in the subjunctive. That God himself looks forward to welcoming you home. Again, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt, helping out at Calvary as emeritus, no longer the full-time pastor there anymore, but emeritus. It just means retired and helping out. But we welcome you and hope you have a good day. Get vaccinated if you're not, and if you are, still be careful. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.